Welcome to Marin Shakespeare Company's Romeo and Juliet. We continue with Act 5. Romeo and Juliet are from warring families, but they've fallen in love. Their families and the law conspire to separate them. As we continue our story, Romeo has been exiled to Mantua, and Juliet is desperately sad.
And what is bound that lady the I'm read by premonition. Should I wait to find you gone? Then peace may lie lamb to love's deepest decision and live. Deep in tradition, I'm trapped within this premonition.
So here are some of our favorite warm-up exercises. First, I'm going to ask each one of us to introduce ourselves with our name and say how we're feeling right now. And then we're going to follow that with a sound and a movement that expresses that feeling. I'll start. My name is Alejandra, and I'm feeling peaceful.
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 And I'll pass it to Leslie.
Hello, my name is Leslie, and I'm feeling scattered.
I'm Tina, and I'm feeling uncertain.
Oh, uncertain.
Uncertain.
Cool. Now we're going to play with those sounds and movements with a little game that we like to call sound ball. What we're going to do is we're going to go around and each one of us is going to say our name plus a sound and a movement that we feel expresses who we are. So I'll start. My name is Alejandra, and I'm going to go with boop.
Boop. I'm Leslie, and I feel ooh.
Ooh.
Woo!
Tina.
Cool. So now what I'm going to ask us to do is we're going to rub our hands together. We're going to generate all that fun, exciting creativity and energy inside of us. Once our hands are nice and warm, I'm going to have everybody throw their energy to me through their computer screens. I'm going to catch it on 1, 2, 3, throw it. Whew. Okay, that was a powerful blast of energy. Great, so now that I have all this energy, what's going to happen is I'm going to throw this energy with the sound and a movement, and somebody else is going to catch it by repeating that sound and movement, and they're going to throw that energy to somebody else with a different sound and movement, and we're going to keep passing that energy around just like that. So here we go. Boop.
Boop. Ha, woo.
Whoa! Wee!
Wee. Yeah, 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 yeah.
Yeah, 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 yeah. Zing.
Zing!
Whoop, 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 whoop.
Wow.
Wow! Arrgh!
Arrgh. Achoo. And then we'll end it there.
In the scene we're about to see, Romeo has had a dream about how wonderful it will be to be with Juliet again. He dreamt that he was dead and she kissed him and brought him back to life. Then his page, Balthazar, comes in with the news that Juliet has died. Romeo writes a letter and gives it to Balthazar and sends him off. And then he remembers that he has seen an apothecary shop. An apothecary is like a druggist, like a drugstore. And he goes to the apothecary shop and asks to buy some poison. The apothecary says, it's against the law to sell poison, but Romeo offers him a lot of money. And the apothecary, because he's so poor, takes the money and gives Romeo the poison.
One thing we know about Romeo is that he is really good at telling the future. His dreams and premonitions usually point the way toward what his future holds. Remember the dream he had before he met Juliet at her father's party? This dream in this scene, though, is deceptively positive. Or rather, Romeo is so in love that he misinterprets what is a pretty clear signal that something bad is going to happen. And that proves to be a fatal mistake.
We don't know very much about Balthazar. We don't know if he's just a messenger, kind of knows Romeo, maybe they've been best friends since 3rd grade. But the point is, Balthazar knows that he has to deliver hard news. In fact, he knows it's so difficult for Romeo to hear that when Romeo comes at Balthazar and says, "For nothing can be ill if she be well," Balthazar answers immediately back, "Then she is well, and nothing can be ill." And then he absolutely tears Romeo's soul apart by telling him the truth. And hard news just becomes harder for both of these gentlemen.
What's really interesting to me in the scene is how quick and decisive Romeo is. A few scenes ago, after Tybalt and Mercutio's death, Romeo was desperate, irrational, emotional, and frantic. With news of Juliet's death, though, the young, hot-headed lover suddenly loses his innocence. He grows up before our very eyes and coolly and calmly makes the desperate decision to visit an apothecary, get poison, and return to Juliet's grave to drink the poison and be reunited with her in the only way he can. We already know that Romeo and Juliet would rather die than not be together. What's different now is how calm he is in the face of certain death. It's a desperate choice taken by a man who has run out of options.
The character of the apothecary, who we see only briefly, is so beautifully written by Shakespeare. We learn that this apothecary is so poor he can't feed his family. And although he tells us the penalty for selling poison is death, eventually he consents to give Romeo the poison. He says, "My poverty, but not my will, consents." He commits this crime because he needs the money so much and not because he wants to.
The apothecary is poor and starving. He has no choice but to take Romeo's money, break the law, and give Romeo the means for his own death. Just like Romeo, he's desperate. And as we're seeing throughout this entire play, desperate people faced with impossible situations have to take desperate action.
Have you ever been in a situation where you could only imagine how wonderful something would be? Does imagining that sweetness and joy make you feel better?
Romeo hears from Balthazar and immediately makes up his mind. What would you do? Would you try to get more information? Or would you head straight to the apothecary and get a poison that could kill you?
Has there ever been a time in your life where you've had to deliver horrible news?
If I may trust the flattering truth of sleep, my dreams presage some joyful news at hand. My bosom's Lord sits lightly in his throne, and all this day an unaccustomed spirit lifts me above the ground with cheerful thoughts. I dreamt my lady came and found me dead. Strange dream that gives a dead man leave to think, and breathed such life with kisses in my lips that I revived and was an emperor. Ah, me. How sweet is love itself possessed, when but love's shadows are so rich in joy. News from Verona. How now, Balthazar? Dost thou not bring me letters from the friar? How doth my lady? Is my father well? How fares my Juliet? That I ask again, for nothing can be ill if she is well.
Then she is well, and nothing can be ill. Her body sleeps in chapel's monuments, and her immortal parts with angels lives. I saw her lay low in her kindred's vault, and presently took post to tell it you. Oh, pardon me for bringing these ill news, since you did leave it for my office, sir.
Is it even so? And I defy you, stars. Thou knowest my lodging? Get me ink and paper and hire post horses. I will hence tonight.
I do beseech you, sir, have patience. Your looks are pale and wild, and do import some misadventure.
Tush, thou art deceived. Leave me and do the thing I bid thee do. Hast thou no letters to me from the friar?
No, no, my good lord.
No matter, get thee gone, and hire those horses. I'll be with thee straight. Well, Juliet, I will lie with thee tonight. Let's see for means. Oh, mischief! Thou art swift to enter in the thoughts of desperate men. I do remember an apothecary, and hereabouts he dwells, which late I noted in tattered weeds, with overwhelming brows, culling of simples. Meager were his looks. Sharp misery had worn him to the bones, and in his needy shop a tortoise hung, an alligator stuffed, and other skins of ill-shaped fishes, and about his shelves a beggarly account of empty boxes, green earthen pots, bladders and musty seeds, remnants of pack thread and old cakes of roses were thinly scattered to make up a show. Noting this penury to myself, I said, and if a man did need a poison now, whose sale is present death in Mantua, here lives a caitiff wretch would sell it him. This same thought did but forerun my need, and this same needy man must sell it me. As I remember, this should be the house. Being a holiday, the beggar's shop is shut. What ho! Apothecary!
Who calls so loud?
Come hither, man. I see that thou art poor. Hold! There is 40 ducats. Let me have some dram of poison, such soon speeding gear as will disperse itself through all the veins, that the life-weary taker may fall dead, and that the trunk may be discharged of breath, as violently as hasty powder fired doth hurry from the fatal cannon's womb.
Such mortal drugs I have, but Mantua's law is death to any he that utters them.
Art thou so bare and full of wretchedness, and fear'st to die? Famine is in thy cheeks. Need and oppression starveth in thine eyes. Contempt and beggary hangs upon thy back. The world is not thy friend, nor the world's law. The world affords no law to make thee rich. Then be not poor, but break it and take this.
My poverty, but not my will, consents.
I pay thy poverty and not thy will.
Put this in any liquid thing you will, and drink it off, And if you have the strength of 20 men, it will dispatch you straight.
There's thy gold. Worse poison to men's souls, doing more murders in this loathsome world than these poor compounds that thou mayest not sell. I sell thee poison, thou hast sold me none. Farewell. Buy food and get thyself in flesh. Come, cordial and not poison, go with me to Juliet's grave, for there must I use thee.
In the next scene, the sweet but bumbling Friar John returns to Friar Lawrence to tell him he was not able to do what Friar Lawrence asked him to do. What Friar Lawrence gave him as an assignment was to take a message to Romeo in Mantua that Juliet is not really dead. Friar Lawrence went to get someone else to accompany him, and the authorities thought that the two of them had been near a house of plague and made them quarantine. And that's why Friar Lawrence does not get his message to Romeo that Juliet's death is fate.
When I think about this scene coming up, I'm reminded of an old saying, men plan, God laughs. Even though Friar Lawrence thinks he's planned everything perfectly, he couldn't plan for the literal plague. Here's the thing about the plague in Shakespeare's time. It was very common, and it was really ordinary practice to seal up a house if someone inside was suspected of having the plague. Sound familiar? So to our modern ears, as we live through a pandemic of our very own, we hear Friar John's story as this crazy, unexpected, fateful occurrence, when what happened to him was actually just a part of regular life. Fate didn't intervene for Romeo and Juliet. Everyday life and the rules of their society got in the way.
But I love how in about 8 lines, Friar John admits that the task did not get completed, and Friar Lawrence is like, that's all right, get me a crowbar, I gotta get to the monument. He doesn't skip a beat, and he goes into action almost immediately.
Friar John is obviously a very well-meaning person, but he is one of the reasons why Romeo and Juliet end up dying at the end of this play.
A coincidental outbreak of the plague traps Friar John inside a sick house, but it has a ripple effect. And in a very indirect way, the plague is actually the biggest villain and is responsible for Romeo and Juliet's death. Has your life ever been changed or affected by a coincidence or random occurrence?
Friar John wasn't able to get Friar Lawrence's letter to Romeo. Have you ever been tasked with an important job and not been able to complete it? How did you feel?
Friar Lawrence delegates a very important task to Friar John. Have you ever been in a position where you've delegated something to someone who then let you down?
Have your decisions or actions ever had a ripple effect or unintended consequences?
How quick do you think you are on your feet?
Holy Franciscan Friar, brother, ho!
This same should be the voice of Friar John. Welcome from Mantua. What says Romeo? Or if his mind be writ, give me his letter.
Going to find a barefoot brother out, one of our order to associate me here in the city visiting the sick, and finding him, the searchers of the town, suspecting that we both were in a house where the infectious pestilence did reign, sealed up the doors and would not let us forth, so that my speed to Mantua there was stayed.
Who bear my letter then to Romeo?
Oh, I could not send it. Here it is again. Nor get a messenger to bring it to thee. So fearful they were of infection.
Unhappy fortune! my brotherhood. The letter was not nice, but full of charge, of dear import, and the neglect it may do much danger. Friar John! Go hence. Get me an iron crow. Bring it straight unto my cell.
Brother, I'll go and bring it thee.
Now must I go to the monument alone. Within 3 hours will fair Juliet wake. She will beshrew me much that Romeo hath no notice of these accidents, but I will ride again to Mantua and keep her at my cell till Romeo come. Poor living corse, clothed in a dead man's tomb.
In the final scene of the play, Paris arrives with flowers at the Capulet tomb. He sends his page away so he can mourn, and then he hears someone coming, so he hides to see who it is. Romeo comes in. He gives his page Balthazar a letter and says, "Give that to my father tomorrow. Now leave, go away. I am savage wild," he says. "Leave me alone." Balthazar is worried, so he goes off and hides. He doesn't leave altogether. Paris then confronts Romeo, says, "What are you doing here? You killed the family members and now you've come to desecrate their tomb? Be ready to die." Romeo says, "I came here to die. Get away from me. I'm desperate. Don't let me spill any more of your blood." But the two young men end up fighting, and Romeo kills Paris. As Romeo enters the tomb, Juliet's corpse seems like a light that is lighting up this dark space. Romeo looks at his beautiful bride, says his farewell, drinks the poison, and dies. Then Friar Lawrence comes to the tomb, and he asks Balthazar, who's been hiding, what's going on. Balthazar says, "Romeo is in there." Friar John is upset and worried. He goes into the tomb and sees Romeo's dead body. Just then, Juliet wakes up. Friar John tries to get her to go away with him, but when she sees Romeo's body, she won't leave. Friar John says, "I gotta get out of here. I'm too afraid to stay," leaving Juliet behind. She kisses Romeo one last time, takes his dagger, and stabs herself. The watch come, the police of the town, the families come, and the prince comes. They find the friar cowering. They ask for explanations. The prince says, "Some people are going to be pardoned and some people are going to be punished." The two fathers, Lord Capulet and Lord Montague, reconcile with each other. And as the prince says, there is a glooming peace, a peace full of gloom. And that's the end of our story of Romeo and Juliet.
So, one thing before you watch this scene. If you find yourself halfway through thinking this is a really long scene and there is a lot happening, you're not wrong. This is the final scene of the play, sometimes called the denouement, which is French for untangling. Since this is the last scene of the play, every subplot and every twist and turn and almost every character now has to have a resolution. That means that there's going to be a lot of action in the scene, but hang on, we promise it's all worth it.
So we've reached that point in the play where we've heard the play almost 3 times. By the time you get through the scene, you will have heard it 3 times. Remember that prologue where it said 2 houses, both alike in dignity? Well, then we had the entire story where it worked itself out and you heard the story the 2nd time. And now we get to Friar Lawrence, who actually tells the whole story for the 3rd time. It just goes to show you how conscious that William Shakespeare was when it came to his audience really understanding the intricacies of the story at hand. I think it speaks volumes about the writer, and it also speaks volumes about the actors that they can bring it to the audience 3 different times and the audience doesn't leave going, "We heard that story already." It really, really speaks to the tendencies that we have to think Shakespeare is boring, when really, if we listen in and lean in, which we are challenging you to do, you get the story from 3 different perspectives, which in our day and age is really important, to hear it from 3 different voices. Not a single source, but 3.
One moment that always captures me in this scene is when Paris and Romeo meet. Paris hopes to defend Juliet's family's honor, but Romeo pleads with him to leave him. He tells him, "Put not another sin upon my head." He knows his fate and will not withdraw, even if there is great cost. The weight of religion was heavy at this time. Romeo has had the sin of death on his hands and will have the cost of his own death. But Romeo does not care of the cost. He wants to be at peace with his Juliet.
Before Romeo and Paris duel, he warns him, "Tempt not a desperate man. Fly hence and leave me. Put not another sin upon my head." He fights and kills Paris, almost despite himself. He's desperate to be reunited with Juliet and has nothing left to lose. He doesn't want his love story to be responsible for yet another death. But at this point, the violence and death is inevitable.
One of the things Romeo says right before he drinks the poison and dies is, "Thou desperate pilot, now at once run on the dashing rocks, thy seasick weary bark." Romeo is saying that he is a seasick weary bark. Bark means a boat, but it also is the image of the bark of a tree. Romeo is seasick and he's weary, and he is saying to this desperate pilot, this fate or God or whatever it is that leads him and guides his life, "Take me and run my seasick self onto the rocks and let me die." It's a really beautiful image.
The power of guilt and grief is really strong in this scene. Even as Romeo is preparing to poison himself, he apologizes to Paris and Tybalt, whose bodies lie nearby, and begs forgiveness. They are collateral damage in the wreckage of his family's feud. Even as he's grieving for Juliet and himself, Romeo still wants to be forgiven for taking his friends down with him.
At the end of this scene, when Lord Capulet and Lord Montague find their children's dead bodies entwined together and hear about their illicit love and secret marriage, they decide to forgive each other and reconcile. Lord Capulet says to Lord Montague, "Here is my hand. It's all that I can give you." And Lord Montague says, "Well, I can give you more. I'll make a statue of Juliet in pure gold." I think it's somewhat ironic that even in the moment when these 2 long-standing enemies reconcile and are seeking for peace, they still have this competition to see who can do more. This time it's who can do more for the good.
Prince Aeschylus is going to sum up the whole message of the play with 3 powerful words. All are punished. While the image we may be left with at the end of the play is that of the dead Romeo and Juliet locked in this eternal tragic embrace, zoom out. They're surrounded by the bodies and the wreckage of the feud between their 2 families. Tybalt's body is nearby. Paris lies dead near them. Mercutio is even mentioned during Romeo's final monologue. And we learn during that speech that Paris and Mercutio were cousins to the prince. As the prince says those words, "All are punished," he means it quite literally. There is not a single person on stage whose lives have not been affected or torn apart because of this ancient grudge. Even the prince himself, who was not directly involved in the fight and was a bystander, has suffered because of it.
The play ends with a truncated or shorted sonnet, alluding to the fact that their lives were cut short for their love.
This is a grim message and a grim image to end on, but I think that there's a little kernel of hope. The two families do bury the hatchet and promise to move forward in peace, thereby bringing peace to their town as well. I also see it as a warning from Shakespeare to audiences across the ages to not allow prejudice, assumptions, and bias to turn into violence, because violence knows no limits and feeds on itself. Violence begets violence. The only thing that stops it is love.
Now, I also want to talk about how indeed the Montagues and the Capulets come together through this tragedy. It may seem really quick, and it is, but maybe that's how surface the argument was to begin with. Now, I don't remember who exactly it was, but one of the lords refers to the other lord as brother. Now, there can be some inference that are they related in some way, shape, or form. There could be another inference that possibly they are religiously linked, and it's a religious battle, if you will. Or the third theory is that he's just trying to be kind to this human that he hasn't been kind to in a very long time. The beautiful thing about this particular scene and that particular moment is you, as the acting company, get to decide where you want to go. Now, my final question for you is, have you ever found a silver lining out of a huge tragedy?
What do you think would happen if Romeo and Juliet lived? Could their families have lived in peace?
Romeo and Juliet persevered in trying to find a way to end the violence and be together, even though it cost them their life. What are you fighting for? What do you believe is the solution to ending prejudice and stopping violence? How can you stand up for peace, justice, and love?
What do you think about this story of Romeo and Juliet and its tragic ending? Do you wish that some of the characters had made different choices? Or do you like the story just the way Shakespeare wrote it?
Do you think Romeo and Juliet's death will truly bring an end to this feud?
Give me thy torch, boy, hence, and stand aloof, yet puts doubt, for I would not be seen. Under yon yew trees lay thee all along, holding thine ear close to the hollow ground, so shall no foot upon the churchyard tread, being loose, unfirm, with digging up of graves. If thou shalt hear it, whistle then to me, as signal that thou hearest something approach. Give me those flowers. Do as I bid thee. Go.
I am almost afraid to stand alone here in the churchyard, yet I will adventure.
Sweet flower, where flowers thy bridal bed I strew. Oh, woe, thy canopy is dust and stones, which with sweet water nightly I will do. Or, wanting that, with tears distilled by moans, the obsequies that I for thee will keep, nightly shall be to strew thy grave and weep. The boy gives warning something does approach. What cursed foot wanders this way tonight, to cross my obsequies and true love's right? What with a torch? Muffle me, night, a while.
Give me that mattock and the wrenching iron. Hold. Take this letter. Early in the morning, see thou deliver it to my lord and father. Give me the light. Upon thy life, I charge thee, whate'er thou hearest or seest, stand all aloof, and do not interrupt me in my course. Why I descend into this bed of death is partly to behold my lady's face, but chiefly to take thence from her dead finger a precious ring, a ring that I must use in dear employment. Therefore hence, be gone. But if thou, jealous, dost return to pry in what I further shall intend to do, by heaven I shall tear thee joint by joint, and strew this hungry churchyard with thy limbs. The time and my intents are savage wild, more fierce and more inexorable far than empty tigers or the roaring sea.
I will be gone, sir, and not trouble you.
So shalt thou show me friendship. Take thou that. Live and be prosperous, and farewell, good fellow.
For all the same, I hide hereabout. His looks I fear, and his intents I doubt.
Thou detestable maw, thou womb of death, gorged with the dearest morsel of the earth. Thus I enforce thy rotten jaws to open, and in despite, I'll cram thee with more food.
This is that banished Haunty Montague. The murder of my love's cousin. Which grief. His supposed fair creature died. And here's to come to do some villainous shame to the dead bodies? I will apprehend him. Stop, thy unhallowed toil, vile Montague. Can vengeance be pursued further than death? Condemn, villain! I do apprehend thee. Obey, and go with me, for thou must die.
I must indeed, and therefore came I hither. Good gentle youth, tempt not a desperate man. Fly hence and leave me. Think upon these gone, let them affright thee, I beseech thee, youth. Put not another sin upon my head by urging me to fury. Oh, begone! By heaven, I love thee better than myself, for I come hither armed against myself. Stay not, begone, live, and hereafter say a madman's mercy bade thee run away.
I do defy thy conjurations, and apprehend thee for a felon here.
Wilt thou provoke me? Then have at thee, boy!
Oh, Lord, they fight. I will go call the watch.
I am slain. If thou be merciful, open the tomb. Lay me with Juliet.
In faith I will. Let me peruse this face. Mercutio's kinsman, noble county Paris. What said my man when my betossed soul did not attend him as we rode? I think he told me Paris should have married Juliet. Said he not so? Or did I dream it so? Or am I mad, hearing him talk of Juliet, to think it was so? Oh, give me thy hand. One writ with me in sour misfortune's book. I'll bury thee in a triumphant grave. A grave? Oh no, a lantern, slaughtered youth. For here lies Juliet, and her beauty makes this vault a feasting presence full of light. Death, lie thou there, by a dead man interred. How oft, when men are at the point of death, have they been merry, which their keepers call a lightning before death. How may I call this a lightning? Oh, my love, my wife. Death, that hath sucked the honey of thy breath, hath had no power yet upon thy beauty. Thou art not conquered. Beauty's ensign yet is crimson in thy lips and in thy cheeks, and death's pale flag is not advanced there. Tybalt, Liest thou there in thy bloody sheet? What more favor can I do to thee than with that hand that cut thy youth in twain to sunder his that was thine enemy? Forgive me, cousin. Dear Juliet, why art thou yet so fair? Shall I believe that unsubstantial death is amorous, and that the lean abhorred monster keeps thee here in dark to be his paramour? For fear of that, I still will stay with thee, and never from this palace of dim night depart again. Here will I remain with worms that are thy chambermaids. Oh, here will I set up my everlasting rest, and shake the yoke of inauspicious stars from this world-wearied flesh. Eyes, look your last. Arms, take your last embrace. And lips, oh, you the doors of breath, seal with a righteous kiss a dateless bargain to engrossing death. Come, bitter conduct. Come, unsavory guide, thou desperate pilot, now at once run on the dashing rocks thy seasick, weary bark. Here's to my love. Oh, true apothecary, thy drugs are quick. Thus with a kiss, I die.
St. Francis be my speed. How oft tonight have my old feet stumbled at graves? Who's there?
Here, one, a friend and one that knows you well.
Bless be upon you. Tell me, good my friend, what tortures yon that Bailey lends his light to grubs and eyeless skulls? As I discern, it burneth in the capitol's monument.
It do so, holy sir. And there is my master, one that you love.
Who is it?
Romeo.
How long has he been there?
Full half an hour.
Go with me to the vault.
I dare not, sir. My master knows not, but I am gone here, and fearfully did menace me with death, if I did stay to look upon his intents.
Stay then. I'll go alone. Fear comes upon me. Oh, much I fear some ill unlucky thing.
As I did sleep under the yew tree here, I dreamt my master in another farm, and that my master slew him.
Romeo! Alack, what blood is this, which stains the stony interest of this sepulchre? What mean these masterless and gory swords to lie discolored by this place of peace? Romeo! Oh, pale! Who else? What? Paris too! It's steeped in blood! Oh, what an unkind hour! It's guilty of this lamentable chance! The lady stirs.
Oh, comfortable friar, where's my lord? I do remember well where I should be, and there I am. Where's my Romeo?
I hear some noise. Lady, come from that nest. Death, contagion, and unnatural sleep. A greater power than we can contradict hath thwarted our intents. Come away. Thy husband in thy bosom there lies dead. then Paris too. Come, I'll dispose of thee among a sisterhood of holy nuns. Stay not to question, for the watch is coming. Come, go, good Juliet. I dare no longer stay.
Go, get the ends, for I will not away. What's here? God. Drop on my true love's hand. The poison has been his timely end. Oh, truth! Drunk all, left no friendly drop to help me after. I will kiss thy lips. Haply some poison yet doth hung on them to make die with a restorative. Thy lips are warm.
Lead, boy. Which way?
Yea, noise, that I'll be brief. Oh, happy dagger. Here is thy sheath. Sarah, and let me die.
This is the place there where the torch doth burn.
The ground is bloody. Search about the churchyard. Go, some of you. Whoe'er you find, attach. Pitiful sight. Here lies the county slain, and Juliet bleeding, warm and newly dead, who here hath lain these 2 days buried. Go, tell the prince, run to the Capulets, raise up the Montagues, some others search. We see the ground whereon these woes do lie, but the true ground of all these piteous woes we cannot without circumstance descry.
Here's Romeo's man. We found him in the churchyard.
Hold him in safety till the prince come hither.
Here's a friar that trembles and sighs and weeps. We took this mattock and this spade from him as he was coming from this churchyard side.
A great suspicion. Stay the friar too.
What misadventure is so early up that calls our person from our morning's rest?
What could it be that they so shriek abroad?
The people in the street cry Romeo, some Juliet, and some Paris, and all run with open outcry toward our monument.
What fear is this which startles in our ear?
Sovereign, here lies the county Paris slain, and Romeo dead, and Juliet dead before, warm and new killed.
Search, seek, and know how this foul murder comes.
Here is a friar, and slaughtered Romeo's men with instruments upon them fit to open these dead men's tombs.
Oh, heavens! Oh, wife! Look how our daughter bleeds. This dagger hath mistaken for lo. His house is empty on the back of the Montague. And it missheathed in my daughter's bosoms.
Oh, me! This sight of death is as a bell that warns my old age to a sepulchre.
Come, Montague, thou art early up to see thy son and heir more early down.
Alas, my liege, my wife is dead tonight. Grief of my son's exile has stopped her breath. What further woe conspires against mine age?
Look, and thou shalt see.
Oh, thou untaught! What manners is in this? To go before thy father to a grave.
Seal up the mouth of outrage for a while, till we can clear these ambiguities and know their spring, their head, their true descent. And then will I be general of your woes and lead you even to death. Meantime forbear, and let mischance be slave to patience. Bring forth the parties of suspicion.
I am the greatest, able to do the least, yet most suspected, as the time and place doth make against me of this direful murder. And here I stand, both to impeach and purge myself condemned, myself excused.
Then say at once what thou dost know in this.
I will be brief, for my short dated breath is not so long as a tedious tale. Romeo, there dead, was husband to that Juliet, and she there dead, that Romeo's faithful wife. I married them, and their stolen marriage day was Tybalt's doomsday, whose untimely death banisheth the new-made bridegroom from the city. For whom and not for Tybalt, Juliet pined. You, to remove that siege of grief from her, betrothed and would have married perforce to county Paris, and then comes she to me, and with wild looks bid me devise some mean to rid her from the second marriage, or in my cell there would she kill herself. Then gave I her, so tutored by my art, a sleeping potion, which so took effect as I intended, for to wrought on her the form of death. Meantime I writ to Romeo, that he should hither come as this dire night, to help me take her from her borrowed grave, being the time the potion's force should cease. But he which bore my letter, Friar John, was stayed by accident, and yesternight returned my letter back. Then all alone, at the fixed hour of her waking, came I to take her from her kindred's vault, meaning to keep her closely at my cell, till I conveniently could send to Romeo. But when I came, some minute ere the time of her waking, here untimely lay the noble Paris and true Romeo dead. She wakes, and I entreated her come forth and bear this work of heaven with patience. But then a noise did scare me from the tomb, and she, desperate, would not go with me, was as it seems did violence on herself. All this I know, and to the marriage her nurse is privy. And if aught in this miscarried by my fault, let my old life be sacrificed some hour before his time unto the rigor of severest law.
We still have known thee for a holy man. Where's Romeo's man? What can he say in this?
I brought my master news of Juliet's death, and then in post he came from Anthony. To this same place, to this same monument. This letter, he early bid me give his father, and threatened me with death going in the vault. I departed not and left him there.
Give me the letter. I will look on it. Where is the county's page that raised the watch? Sirrah, what made your master in this place?
He came with flowers to strew his lady's grave and bid me to stand aloof, and so I did. Anon comes with one with light to ope the tomb, and by and by my master drew on him, and I ran away to call the watch.
This letter doth make good the friar's words, their course of love, the tidings of her death. And here he writes that he did buy a poison of a poor apothecary, and therewithal came to this vault to die, and lie with Juliet. Where be these enemies? Capulet, Montague, see what a scourge is laid upon your hate, that heaven finds means to kill your joys with love. And I, for winking at your discord too, have lost a brace of kinsmen. All are punished.
Oh, Brother Montague, give me your hand. This is my daughter's jointure, for no more can I demand.
But I will give thee more, for I will raise her statue in pure gold, that while Verona by that name is known, there shall no figure at such rate be set as that of true and faithful Juliet.
As rich shall Romeo's by his lady's life, poor sacrifices of our enmity.
A glooming peace this morning with it brings. The sun for sorrow will not show his head. Go hence to have more talk of these sad things. Some shall be pardoned, and some punished. For never was a story of more woe than this of Juliet and her Romeo.
Thank you for watching Marin Shakespeare Company's Romeo and Juliet. We are grateful to the following: our fabulous actors, Shakespeare for Social Justice teaching artists, members of Marin Shakespeare Company's professional acting company, and former members of our Shakespeare for Social Justice programs. The original music for these recordings was written and performed by Eric Abercrombie and Richie Morris. We're grateful for the support of the California Arts Council, the California Department of Corrections and Rehabilitation, and we wish for all of you safety, peace, and that during this time, we can all change ourselves and our world for the better. Thanks for watching.
Sweet the measure by measure. Now look upon your face, so pale and still lying there. Life no longer left a trace, and all the songs we'll never sing cannot forestall my deep lament. Love so sweet, the waiting hour, into the deepest depths I'm sent, and my heart is full of woe. Reminder of what I will never know. Sun does set on my deepest hope. Oh, how